Thank you all for coming and joining us today. I want to introduce Kim, and he is going to be leading the administrative training for your Plone upgrade. If time allows, at the end of this training, what we will do is move right into a CSS color selection period, but if not, we have time allotted for that later this afternoon. So now, Kim, if you want to go ahead and get started.
Okay, good morning. And Nick, I'll do my best to try to remember to stop periodically and ask for questions. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you okay, but if you want to be a little louder, that's okay too.
Okay, I'll try. So please feel free to interrupt, or if you like, if you have access to it, if you want to use the chat feature, the chat box, and post questions in there, maybe maybe Joanna can see them and then interrupt me as well. So the administrator training that we're going to go through this morning is really intended to show you quite a few things that you may want to use or that you should actually just know about, that they're possible, but not worry that you have to memorize everything or that you have to be 100% well-versed in everything by the end of this training class. Because to be honest, it would take a lot more than 2 hours, or even the 1 hour that we're really kind of targeting here, to master all of this. Plone is a very complex, powerful system, and there's a lot of functionality that you'll see. There's a lot of different control panels that administrators have access to. So I'm basically going to have to gloss over a lot of those, and I'll try to highlight the features and the functionality that you're likelier to need. So I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Oop. Don't want to press the wrong button and leave the meeting. And I'm going to select desktop 1. All right, hopefully you can see my screen.
It looks like we can.
Good. Okay, so I'm going to be going through the administrator guide, which we have here, and I believe we will be sending you a PDF version of this document. But I'm going to follow through it mostly sequentially. And so the way that we've organized our training is that we've separated the training for content creators and for administrators. And the reason being that there's so much functionality that is specific to managing the content on a Plone site that we want to make sure that we had the right audience in each training class. So really this is, again, intended for people who are going to be managing the site. That is, people who have the ability or the permissions to configure the site and make site-wide changes, not only to content, but to configuration. And in addition to which, we are also aiming this guide at department heads who will be responsible for managing permissions, for example, sharing permissions in their particular department folders. So those are the two kinds of administrators that we have in mind. And so at the very top of the doc, yes?
Kim, I just want to comment on that. Brandon's probably going to be the one group, and then we have people who are like either the department heads or significant members of the department who will be the other group. So we probably we're heavy on the second group that you mentioned, and Brandon's probably more the first group you mentioned.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
So one of the things that with the experience that we have in Plone, we know that there are things that users will run into. By and large, Plone is fairly self-explanatory. When somebody logs into a site and they have permissions to edit content, they pretty much can see a toolbar appear, and the functions that are available to them are fairly obvious. And so we find that just showing somebody how to edit content or manage content is usually enough to give them hints that they'll remember when they're next logged into the site and have to do something. But there are users that we found who only touch a site occasionally, and therefore they forget and get into trouble. And so what we wanted to do is start this document and this training class with an outline of some of the common problems that your users may run into, and some of the workarounds or diagnoses that you can go through to try to resolve some of these common issues. So just to get them out of the way. And so this is this section that I have here in case of problems. So it's not to say that Plone is a problematic piece of software, because it isn't, but users being users, they often can get tripped up. So I won't go into too much detail here, because again, there's a lot of material to cover, but mostly the information that you're going to want to need from your users if they report a problem is listed here in the section that talks about getting details on what the user was doing and possibly trying things a little bit differently with a different browser, for example. Sometimes you can find that users have been assigned roles or group memberships incorrectly, and that's often a source of security misunderstandings. So a user may say, I can't edit a particular page, and that would be because, usually because they haven't been assigned to the correct member, to the correct groups. We'll see also later on that the sharing tab, the sharing button, whoops, excuse me. Let me see, where am I? The sharing button in Plone is very useful for fostering collaboration between members of a group. And it's possible, again, that a user has not been added to a particular group that has been given sharing permissions on a folder. And then there's a number of other issues. Probably the most interesting one is going to be unintentional deletion of content. And that is, of course, something that you can usually avoid if you manage permissions on your site, so that most people can't delete content. But it does happen that somebody will mistakenly delete a page, or sometimes even worse, a folder. And there is an undo feature in Plone that is described in this document that will show you how to essentially restore the deleted content. And in cases where it's a site administrator who makes a configuration change that needs to be undone, how to undo those as well. Any questions so far?
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. So logging in is the first step for any content editor and for any site administrator. And actually, Joanna reminded me, too late for me to, when I was preparing this document, that you actually have a very slick hidden feature that lets you log into your site. And so let me show you here. So hopefully you can see your new site. There is this little person icon in the top bar here. And if I click on it, I'm taken to the login page. So that's the easiest way to log into your site. And I'm going to log in as the administrator. So once I've logged in, I can see a toolbar on the left. And this is, well, usually we refer to it as the editing toolbar, but really it's a toolbar that lets you do much more than just editing. But it exposes all of the features, all the functions that are available to me at this particular point in the site. And so this toolbar will change somewhat. It'll have sometimes a lot more buttons, sometimes fewer buttons, depending on which part of the site I'm looking at. And everything in Plone is security aware. So when a person logs into the site, Plone determines what kind of permissions the person has based on individually assigned roles that they may have been given, or to roles that have been given to members, to groups that they're members of. And so Plone does this calculation whenever it has to render the page. So it knows what you're authorized to do. So that is, the toolbar is the key feature here. And if you can do things like you can click on the Plone logo to shrink or expand the toolbar, depending on how much space you want when you're viewing the page. Once you're logged in, this toolbar has at the very bottom, I hope you can see this at the bottom of my screen, there's a menu. It's called the personal menu. And in my case, because I logged in as admin, it's got my username on it. And if I click on it, I'm shown a number of different choices. Preferences lets me do things like, let me click through on it. These are usually settings that your users are unlikely to need to modify, but if they want to display dates and times in different time zones, they can. Not going to be an issue in your case. Also, Plone has translation capability, so if you were to support content in different languages, a user could select which language they wanted to see. Personal information is something that your users are generally not going to need to modify, because you're going to be using your LDAP system to authenticate users. So the first really useful thing that I wanted to show you is the dashboard. And this dashboard is something that's provided to every user. And if you saw, I don't know if you saw this, but I went to the personal menu and I chose dashboard. The dashboard can let users view recent changes on the site. And so this is really useful for site administrators who want to be aware of any new content that was added or content that was modified. And you can see here that I created a test collection, which I'll talk about later, but you can see it's in red, and that indicates it's in the private state. So these are cues that tell you, okay, this is a new piece of content that somebody's started working on but has not published. You can ignore this error message here. That is actually the review list. That would be for they would display content that has been submitted for review before being published, and it would appear in this list. And I believe it might be because there is no content that's been submitted for review. So the dashboard can also be edited. And it's very easy to add portlets. So portlets are these little blocks of content that you've been seeing. So the review list, the recent items list, and the calendar, those are all portlets. And so you can select other portlets here. As time goes by, and depending on the add-ons that have been installed on your site or activated, you will see different kinds of portlets available. So I wanted to show you the dashboard because it's a really good place for a site administrator to get a high-level picture of what's been happening on the site and what needs to be reviewed before it can be published. Any questions so far?
I think we're good.
Okay. So there's, I'm just showing you, that was the portlets, sorry, the dashboard part of the guide. So the next topic I wanted to cover, and this will kind of jump around a little bit because there's so much to cover, but the one custom feature of your site is this, actually it's visible right here on every page. At the bottom of every page is your top requests set of links, and this is implemented as a portlet. And so the way that you manage portlets is to go to the toolbar, and you'll see this Manage Portlets button. And if you click on it, you will see 3 different portlet containers, and the top requests portlet is in the footer. So if you click on footer, you're taken to this Manage Portlets form, and you can see the top request footer portlet. And if you click on this, you can edit its content. So this is the title, or this is what appears in as the title of the portlet, and we're cautioning you not to modify this title, because if you do, the styling may not work correctly on your site. So this is actually key information that our styling uses. So please don't modify that portlet header. However, the contents of the links, for example, you can change. You're free to change. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but you can type in text, and then when you select it, you can indicate that it's a link. And in this case, I believe it's an internal link. Actually, no, I'm not sure. I'm not going to go into detail here. TinyMCE is actually a whole topic in itself. This is the editor that you can use to create and modify rich text anywhere on your site. And so when you're done making changes here, you would press the Save button at the bottom, or cancel, as the case may be.
Yeah, I just want to comment that we have not defined those yet. So they're not what they're going to be. They're just not defined yet.
All right. Yeah, I was kind of wondering about graffiti removal. Okay, so that's how you modified this top request portlet. And so it's always funny to me that you can see the thing that you're editing while you're editing it. So that's covered in this section. All right. So Plone is based on you organize content in a site based on folder structures. So if I go back to the home page, I'm going to show you the contents view, and this is this button that's usually the top button in the toolbar. And if I click on it, I will see essentially kind of like a Windows Explorer view of the site structure. And it's going to show me where I currently am, what the folders are that are in the folder I'm in, and any other items that are in it. So you can see based on the icon here that there's a number of folders. Some of them, well, one of them in particular is private because it's red. You can also look in the column review state and see explicitly what the state is of that item. Now, the default workflow for Plone is that when you create new content, it starts off in the private state, which means that it's not visible to anybody else except for site administrators. And this is useful because as you're working on a new, say, news item, you don't want it shown to anybody else, certainly not the public. So you're free to work on it while it's in the private state. And then when you're done working on it, you would submit it for review, and somebody who's been granted reviewer role on your site would receive notification that this new news item is available for review. The person logs into the site, reviews the content, says this looks good, and then can publish it. And at that moment, that piece of content, that news item, is visible to the public. So workflow is a very important. It's a key element of Plone and managing content. It's very powerful, but that's why you've got this review state column here, and why things are shown to be in different colors depending on their state. So the structure of Plone content is organized by your creating folders, and I think I'm assuming that many of you are already quite familiar with Plone, so I'm going to skip over some of this, but I did want to mention that because the information I have here in the guide about restricting the types that can be added to a folder is a very useful way to manage clutter and to keep your site well organized so that as time goes by, you don't end up with images being scattered all over the site and other editors not knowing where to find an image. So the ability for you to restrict what kind of content can be added to a folder can be very useful. So I want to show you that if I click on the news folder, so interestingly, we have a lot of images in the news folder. The Add New button in the toolbar has at the bottom of the list of choices a restrictions choice. If I click on that, what we see here is right now it looks like a very simple setting of what kinds of content can be added here, and it's defaulting to whatever the site setting is. However, I can select manually which kinds of content types should be added here. So when I select manually, I'm shown all the different kinds of content, well, all the different content types available on the site, and I can uncheck boxes as I need. So if, for example, I wanted to allow only news items in the news folder, or maybe images, then I would uncheck any box here, all the boxes here, except for news item and image. And then I would scroll down and press save. And that would then in turn allow content editors just to see image and news item when they clicked on the Add New button here. You can also use the secondary types checkboxes here. So if you were to, for example, and I won't save this, so no need to worry. I'll uncheck all the boxes. So that's what, if I left just the image and news items checkboxes set and then I press save, then the only choices would be image and news item in the Add New menu. But if I wanted to allow pages, but I wanted them to appear in a secondary menu, then I would check that. So as you can see, I'm allowing pages as well as image and news item, but I'm saying that I want pages to appear in a secondary menu. So what will happen is when an editor clicks on Add New, they'll see image, news item, and more. And then when they click more, then they'll be able to add a page. So this is a very useful way to give a hint to a content editor that, no, I'm sorry, you can't add a news item in a folder that's for the minutes of meetings, for example.
Okay, I have a question on this.
Yes.
This is site-wide. So if we have one department that is interested in images and news items only, and another one that's interested in files and leaks only, then we need to give this settings to all four of them because it's a merge of all the different content types that we need, right?
Actually, no. This is very it's context specific. So I know usually people don't pay attention to the address bar in a browser, but I did want to show you that this folder constraint types form is applied only in this news folder. So this is specific to a folder. You have a lot of fine-grained, you have the ability to set these content type restrictions in each folder of your site. And
thank you.
And if you and a nice thing too is any of these constraints will essentially be inherited into the folders that are contained in this folder. So it's a hierarchical inheritance feature that is, you'll find that this is Plone in a lot of different functionality. So you can set it at a top level folder and it'll percolate down to all of the children, all of the contained items in that folder. So it's a nice way to say that even if a department has multiple subfolders and subfolders, you can set this kind of constraint just in their department folder at the top, and then it's taken care of.
Thank you.
Good question, though. All right. The next thing I wanted to show you is collaboration through sharing. So I'm going to go to the departments. And I will look at the Board of Public Works. The sharing button is in the toolbar, and it allows you to see who's been granted the ability to add content, edit content, review content, and just view content in this folder. So again, this is at the folder level, and if you look at this, oh, I unchecked that. Oh no, oh, sorry. If you look at this part of the form, you can see that by default, any sharing permissions you grant are going to be inherited in any contained folder. So it's the hierarchical organization of Plone, that what you do at the top folder in a folder will percolate down to its contained items, its children, and its children's children, and so on. So this is a very powerful feature that you can see in action here, because this person, for example, has the ability to add, edit, and review content and view content with a checkbox that I cannot uncheck or check. That's because this person has been granted this sharing permission from the parent of this folder. So in other words, probably at the level of either the department's folder or possibly at the top level folder of the site, which is the root of the site. But in this particular folder, the Board of Public Works folder, this person here has been granted permissions explicitly, and I can check or uncheck them if I want. If I need to add more users to this list of sharing permissions, I can look them up. So let me see if I'm in there. I'll just type part of my username. And you can see, yes, so you can see I added a test user here to myself, and this test user does not have any specific permissions. I can say, I want this person to be able to view anything in this folder. This is particularly powerful because if you're trying to organize content by departments, for example, you probably want to grant the members of that department, the staff in that department, the ability to certainly view the content in their folder, but some of them you might also want to grant the ability to add content and to decide whether or not to publish content. And that would be the distinction between the can add column and the can review. That someone who can review is the person who can publish any submitted content. If you were to grant can edit, then that person would be able to edit everything in this folder and below. Once you've made your changes, you can hit save. Any questions so far?
Still doing good.
Okay. I don't hear screaming or gnashing of teeth, although I guess gnashing of teeth is usually a silent thing. Okay. I had in the guide, in addition to just the mechanism that you use for the sharing button, there is a section a little bit further below. Actually, it's right here, on scalable ways of handling granting permissions and roles to users. And The essence of managing a large site with a large number of users and a large number of content editors is to avoid dealing with individual users and to instead create groups, and then you would grant roles and use the sharing form with with groups, and then later elsewhere on the site you can manage in those groups. What we found is it's actually much more convenient for site administrators to deal with just a couple of lines in sharing form, for example, that would show groups, as opposed to large numbers of users, because your users, your staff may change which department they're in, or you may get new hires, you may get people who retire, and so you're going to want to make sure that you keep your site updated so your staff have the appropriate permissions, the appropriate sharing permissions. And the easiest way to do that is to create a group for, say, in this case, the Board of Public Works, and then to assign users to that group. Oh, this is really kind of annoying. All right. And so this part of the document explains how you can do this scalable sharing. And that essentially is to use, I'll cover this control panel where you can manage users and groups on your site. And there's a couple of warnings that control panel that I'm showing, well, actually, this form here is where you're going to be is the one that you're going to want to use the most. But the other control panel I'll show you, which, let me get to it right now, is in the personal menu, and I'll click Site Setup. And this is the set of control panels that are available to administrators. Now, probably it's depending on organizations, but usually it's better to have fewer people have the ability to access this part of the site, these control panels. You want to limit how many people can change settings in this part of the site, because these are configuration settings that can affect and will affect the entire site. So usually it's best to give access to this only to people who've got significant experience, or at least people who are very careful about not changing things they're not fully knowledgeable about. So the users and groups control panel is the place where you can create new groups and you can assign users to groups. So I'm going to show you the Groups tab. And so you can see that a Plone site by default comes with an administrators group. And if you look in this column, these columns indicate the roles that this particular group has been assigned. And the administrators group has the manager role. And that role is required to have access to the control panels. The site administrators group also comes with Plone, and it's been granted the site administrator role. And that does give those members, the members of that group, access to some control panels, but not all. The reviewers group is also predefined by Plone, and that members of that group have the ability to publish content. And then there's this other user group, which is actually a virtual group. It just means anybody who's got a login to the site. And so you can assign, you could, depending on your site, but I would not recommend it for this site, you could assign the reader role, which means somebody in this group would have the ability to view every piece of content on this site. I don't recommend you do that. I just wanted to mention that it's how you would use that group. The thing I would caution you about is that any roles that you grant here are going to be site-wide. So if you don't want a person to be able to edit everything on your site, you do not want to grant editor role with this panel. So again, I guess the takeaway here is that this users and groups control panel controls global settings. And when you're dealing with sharing permissions, you're going to always want to use the sharing button and this sharing form to grant access to particular sections of your site. I know that's maybe a little bit tricky, but I hope you understand the global nature of the settings control panel and the very localized contextual sharing button. All right. How are we doing for time? 40 minutes. Okay. This section here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in. I did want to just mention that Plone ships with a number of workflows, and the default workflow is called Simple Publication Workflow, and that's the one I described to you, where a content item starts off private, and then somebody could submit it for review, and then it would be published potentially. Yes.
Just for you guys, what he was just talking about, if someone new comes to our department, would we fill out paperwork and it would go to you guys to set up if they can have access to the website like we do now?
I would say, yeah.
So we would fill out their paperwork and say they need this,
website capability.
Right, and then I would send it to you to IT, and then IT would set that person up.
Yep.
Would we be able to set them up, or would?
That'd probably be something we would handle. Yep.
Thank you, Kim. Go ahead.
No. It's great to foster conversation as opposed to argument. Okay. Oh, actually, I actually forgot to show you. Back in the users and groups control panel, you can see these group names here, and you can add new groups. So I could say, I'm going to create a group. And here I'm going to call it Board of Public Works. And anytime you see the term ID or unique identifier, you want to use lowercase and not include special characters except for a hyphen. So I'm going to call this Board of Public Works. So I give it a name, a title. The title is what's visible to users. And I could put in a description and email address. And then I will press save. So now you can see the new group. I'm not going to assign any roles to that group with this panel because, again, if I do assign group roles here, they will be global. They will be across the site, and I don't want that. If I click on this group, I can control who is a member of that group. So I'm going to add my test user. And I'm going to, so I've used the search field. I press the search button. I've got this, I've got my user showing up. I'm going to check the box next to that user, and I'm going to say add selected groups and users to this group. So you can use groups to contain other groups. It's a really powerful, again, hierarchical system of management. So now you can see that this new group only has one member, but again, obviously I can add more members to it. Now, if I go back to the sharing form, and I'm going to reload the page here to refresh it. Now I'm going to look for the board, the new group I've created. And you can see the Board of Public Works is here. If I click on this, I'm taken to see who's in, I can see the membership of it. And here I would add, if I wanted, in this case, I wanted everybody in this group to be able to add, edit, review, and view. I would then check those boxes and press the save button. And then this would actually simplify this this list of individual users, I would actually then add these users to that group and then remove their individual entries in the sharing form. So that's how you could.
So it kind of looks like you go to the global group and create it there, but you don't actually assign any global security to it. You bounce back to the folder that you want, and that's how you get the group there.
Exactly. Yep. Because the group control panel here is global to the site, and you don't want to just grant. So, for example, I go back to the groups overview. If I were to grant can add, which is essentially contributor, can edit, can view, and can review here, and press save, that would mean that the members of this group can do this everywhere on the site. All right, so I'm glad you understood that. Okay, so back to the training guide. This really there's a feature in Plone called workflow policies that allows you to set different workflows in different parts of your site. And the chief way that you can use this is to essentially create mini intranets for different departments. And so, as you can imagine, the Board of Public Works, for example, or maybe other departments might want to collaborate on documents or pages or uploaded PDFs that are essentially private to that department. And so you can make a subfolder in a department folder and call it intranet, and then grant a special, essentially apply a different workflow just to that folder. And if you do that, for example, if you apply the intranet workflows to a particular folder, then that means that other people won't necessarily be able to view anything in it, but the members of the groups you've assigned to with the sharing form can collaborate more freely, kind of in private. So that's something it's maybe an advanced feature, but I did want you to be aware of it. It's another way that Plone lets you collaborate better with your colleagues. All right. I did want to cover the topic of collections, and collections are essentially canned queries that you configure, or a content editor can create these things too, but they're a powerful feature, so I wanted to highlight them to you. The collection concept is that, and I'm going to go to the news folder now. The collection concept is quite powerful because what it allows you to do is define criteria that the collection will essentially run every time it gets viewed, and the results of that query based on the criteria you've defined is what gets displayed to the user. So you can make, in this case, let me see what's in this folder. Oh, you got a lot of images in here. All right, so there's a news item here. All right, what I'll do.
And while you're looking, I just want to point out, we are in your sandbox environment, which means that we've been doing some testing in here. So you're going to see some things that, say hi or something like that. And that's just from our QA department testing. So don't be alarmed if you see that. In your staging environment, we've got your actual content.
Thanks. Okay. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, but I clicked on the search icon, this magnifying glass in your top toolbar, and it took me to the search form. And the default search, because I haven't entered any search terms, it'll show me an initial list of content, but I wanted to look at most recent content. And so I clicked on this sort by date, newest first, because I remember creating a test collection. So I want to show you what a collection looks like. That search function is amazingly powerful. instead of having to worry about trying to remember which folder structure something might be in, it's often just way faster to use search and just type in first few letters or the first word or a couple of words that would appear in the title or in the description or in the body of a piece of content. So I have this, I created a test collection and I will edit it. And by the way, the way that you create a test collect, or the way you create a collection is, let me go to departments again. You press add new and you choose collection. So back to my test collection. I'm going to edit it and you'll see what I entered. So everything in Plone has a title. We do recommend that you enter a summary of the item because the title and the summary are what people will easily be able to search through. When they use your search function, any text that is typed into the search box will look to match whether any text that's in the title, the summary, or in the body. So if it's a page or if it's a news item or an event description, it'll match on the body. But the more you use a summary and title effectively, the better for your users and your content editors. So here I have defined search terms that include the type of content that I want to have my collection return. In this case, I wanted to just return pages. Now, let me instead change that to news items. So now you saw that the preview window here just immediately updated itself to show me up to 10 content items that match the search criteria I've defined. So here I've just said I want to show only news items. I could also say that I want news items that include something in the description that says parks. There we go. So here we've got only news items that contain the word parks in their description or their summary. Description and summary are used interchangeably. If I scroll down a bit, I can limit how many search results should come out of this. So if you've got a large number of things that would match, you can limit it. You can also set up a batching, so a number of things that will show up per page. And you can even put in a rich text description of what the collection represents. So here I would say news, sorry, I can't type. And I'll hit save. So here it's showing me only those items that match the search criteria. So later, if somebody else, another content editor, creates a news item that contains the word park in the description, the next time somebody looks at this collection, they will see that other matching news item appear right here. So it's a database query that just gets run every time somebody looks at the collection. And it's very powerful because it allows you to take the same items, the content that's been created by all your content editors, and can make them appear in this one place in a relevant way for the purposes of this collection. So you can make different collections for different kinds of purposes. You could have a collection that shows, again, like if you've got editors who are interested in keeping on top of any news item that refers to parks, you'd make this collection for them. And you can share it only with individuals. So even though it's private, you can use the sharing button to say members of the following group should be able to see this anyway. And you can if you've got other people who are interested in what the mayor has been doing, you could have a collection that shows news items that contain the word mayor or that are in a particular folder of the site. It's a very powerful tool that allows you to make the most, really to reuse in very many different ways the same content that's been created on your site. Any questions?
I have a question. Do you use collections to populate a page that's published?
You certainly can. You can, in this case, if I were to publish this, this would be a page. So pages may be a misleading term here because Plone makes distinctions between pages and news items and events and collections, whereas to a user, a website visitor, it looks like a page. So for a user, an uninformed user, this is a page. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I'm an uninformed user.
I can't believe you are. I mean, Nick, you're really grasping all this.
I had a question. I do the city clerk, city council, and city court web pages. I'm just trying to correlate what a test collection would help me with those pages. So I'm not able to apply it. Is it something I would use for the general public to help search for something, or is it something for me to say I want to know every time we've put a general ordinance on the website?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would it help the general public?
Well, so what I've done is I've edited this collection, and I'm changing the title to say News About Parks, and so or actually maybe not. I can read, but so I've just changed the description to be a little bit more. Okay, this is gonna tell you more what's been happening with our parks. So I can change this so that I don't care that it has to be a news item. It could be a page. So I could say it could also be a page, news item, page, an event. Could be a file, could be an image. And so now you can see there's a lot more things that show up in the collection that are related to parks. In this field, this criterion here, instead of saying I only want to find the word parks in the description, I'm going to say any searchable text should match the word park. So here we have anything that matches the word park anywhere, title, summary, body, doesn't matter. And so you can see now that we've got, cancel. Now we've got way more than 10 items coming back from the query, and I can say here, and then I'll hit save.
Does this help if somebody is Googling city council, Terre Haute City Council? I mean, I'm trying to see how it helps the public. Is it when they go do a search on our website, or does it also apply to like Google or Bing or something?
It'll help both, because here, if somebody were to visit your site and go directly to your site and then use the search feature, then they would be able to search for, they could search for parks also. So let me do that. Let me open up a new tab. I'll click search, and I'll type in parks.
I don't think collections is something we've used a whole lot of on our previous sites. So a lot of this is probably new concepts to our users. Because we don't use collections a whole lot.
Understood.
In the past.
Yeah, the collections are really, I think, one of the killer features of Plone. They're, once you can wrap your head around it, you'll find whole bunches of uses for them. So here I just type news about parks, and then you can see the collection I've been editing is the top search result. And so users who visit your site directly and then search will find it. If you I'm not sure how familiar you are with how Google works, but essentially, once your site goes live, Google will start indexing it and will start going through all the pages that it can see. So all the pages that have been published, and will remember what appears on each page. And so when somebody then goes to Google and searches for news about parks Terre Haute, they're gonna see your collection, assuming that you've published your collection. So since this is a staging site, this is a sandbox site, I'm gonna go ahead and publish it. So you can see here, I'm gonna publish externally. So now the state color has changed. That's a nice cue. So you can see it's published, it's externally visible. So the public will see this, and Google will be able to index this. Does that answer your question?
Yes, for me it does. I see a lot of uses for this.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So again, you can use this to highlight content to your website visitors. You can also use it internally for your content editors or for yourself. For yourself, actually, if you're going to be managing content, you could use the dashboard and add your own collection to the dashboard. So here, for example, I'm going to edit my dashboard, and I'm going to add a portlet for collections. And let's see. And so here I get to specify which collection I want. Okay. All right, why is that not working? Let me navigate to it. There we go. So you can see, well, this could use training of its own, but I'm going to specify that I want to show the news about parks collection right here in my dashboard. And I'll just go down, press save. So now when I view my dashboard, you can see here's my news about parks collection. So this is in my dashboard. So if you start using collections a lot, or you start relying on collections to do your content management, I would recommend you edit your dashboard and add a portlet that shows that particular collection, and then you'll see it right here when you view your dashboard. It's very powerful. All right, I want to move on. There's different. This topic here is about changing the view of your collection, so you can change it. I would encourage you to experiment with these different views for private collections, maybe not for published ones, but they can be, different views can be useful to you in different ways. All right, we're at 1 hour. Is it okay for me, Joanna? Is it okay for me to continue a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. Portlets. As I mentioned before, these things here are portlets in my dashboard, but you can add portlets in different parts of your site. You may want to confer as a group to see which parts of the site you want to have portlets appear in. But for example, in the departments folder or anywhere on the site or any piece of content, you can click on Manage Portlets. And here I'm going to say, I'm going to, actually, let me not do this in the departments folder. Let me go back to the Public Works. They're my guinea pig. I'm going to add a portlet in the right column. And here I'm going to say, I want the calendar portlet to appear. And this allows me to specify, I want any events that are externally visible that have been published. And I don't care where on the site. I want the events to be limited to, but I could specify, okay, well, I only want them to show events. I only want to show events, sorry, that wasn't what I wanted to do. I only want to show events from, is this, from the Board of Public Works folder. So if I hit save, so that, then I'll press return to get out of this. And I think this isn't working because our theme does not allow that. So let me see. Look at pet licensing. Yes. So once I look at a non-custom themed page, I can see my portlet has appeared. You can put portlets in your left column, your right column, or as you saw before in the footer. And so they inherit. So as you get deeper into the folder structure, they will inherit from the parent. You can manage those again from here. So if I manage my right column portlets, you can see that the calendar and events portlets are already set in parent folders of where I am currently in the site. Again, it's situational, it's contextual. It depends on where you're looking at the portlets. And I could block them, so I don't want them to appear. If I don't want them to appear, or I can add new portlets right here in addition to the ones that inherit from the parent folders. So it's a very, again, it's a very nice tool that allows you to highlight content. You can add other kinds of portlets. You can add, for example, a static text portlet is text that doesn't change. So you can insert instructions to users to say, if you're looking for this form or something, you can find it here, or you can do it based on groups. So there's other places in the site, and I won't get into it today, where you can say members of the following group should always see the following portlets. Questions on portlets?
So it looked to me like what you did was, if I was a department head, I could create a portlet on my departmental page and tie my department events to it. That's different than maybe the calendar for the whole city higher up. And I could create a calendar that I could click on my events, right? Exactly.
And in fact, probably a more useful way of showing calendar events specific to a department. I think Joanna was talking to you about it, that it's sometimes hard to see that there's something happening on the 8th here. You kind of have to look at it a little closely to see that there's a link there. So if I click through on it, I can, no, actually, it's not, for some reason, it's not clicking through. Sometimes it's just hard when you look at a calendar widget to see when there's an event taking place. So what I would recommend in that case is make a collection that shows events only for Board of Public Works, and then have a collection portlet here that shows that collection. And then it'll be in a kind of a listing format as opposed to a calendar widget. But yeah, that's exactly how you would use portlets, and you can place them in different parts of your site, so they can do different things in different parts of the site. It's there's, I don't know if you realize this, but I'm so enthusiastic about Plone because I've been using it for, I think now, 16 years. And it's a tool that just blew my mind when I first saw it 16 years ago. And it's still amazing how much it does out of the box. So I'm very glad that you're using it. Okay. I'm just going to skip ahead. Let's see, content rules I did want to mention. And then that's content rules will be the last topic I'll cover. And then I'll kind of go quickly over some of the control panels that you probably will need to use in addition to the users and groups. But content rules are essentially programs that you create by clicking on a form in the Plone site. There are little programs that will look for certain conditions or triggers, like somebody created a piece of content, and then based on conditions that you set, will do different things, will take action. And so one way that I've often used a content rule is that if I'm responsible for reviewing content on the site, on the entire site, I will make a content rule that says if someone submits, if someone changes the state of an item, of a content item to review, in other words, they've submitted it for review, I want to receive an email. And that will allow me to remember, or to basically respond quickly to a request to review a piece of content so I can review it and publish it in a timely way. So I'll just show you quickly how you can do that. I'll go to the site setup, and then you can see content rules here. Now, there are no content rules on the site. I'm first going to enable content rules, and then I'm going to add a new rule. So I'm just giving it a short title. All right, and so the triggering event is that it's actually workflow state has changed. It's gonna be enabled by default, and I'm gonna save it. Now you see I'm editing this particular content rule. I don't have any additional conditions I want. I don't really care what kind of content item it is. I just want, well, actually, I do want to say that the workflow state should be review. So I'm going to say I want to add a condition for workflow state, press add. And what state do I want? I want to say the review state is actually called pending. And I'll press save. So what will happen is this rule so far is going to look at, is going to check when a content item has changed state, and in this case it has been changed to pending. Then what are the actions I want it to take? I want it to send me an email. And an item is available for your review. I don't need to put in a mail source. It's just going to use the email address that's been set for the website, and I want it to send an email to, and then, you know, please review this item ASAP. And then I'm gonna, if you look down here, there's a set of substitution variables that you can use to enter in the body of the message. And so I want to say title and URL. Oop. So, oh, actually, it's absolute URL. Oop. Here we go. So I'm going to scroll down and press save. So now we have the content rule defined. The next thing we want to do is specify where the content rule should be applied. And we have this handy button that says apply it to the entire site. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do that. But if you've got content reviewers who are responsible for a particular portion of the site, then you can go to that part of the site and indicate which content rule should apply. So you don't have to apply a rule globally to the entire site. You can go to an individual folder and say, from here and anything below, I want the following rules to be applied. So again, it's a very situational, contextual way of controlling what happens. I'm going to go ahead and use this because it's a shortcut. I have done this for other sites where I was responsible for content on the entire thing. So now that I've got this content rule set up and applied, I'm going to go to this folder. I'm going to go back to here, which again is the Public Works, Department of Public Works site. So I'm going to click on that. And here I'm going to add a new page. So this page is private initially. You can see it. Now if I'm ready to submit it for publication, I'll click that, and hopefully what will happen is I'll get an email. Let me look at my Outlook. Of course, when I need it, it doesn't show up. And nope. All right, maybe it's oh, I know what's going on. Sorry. Outbound email is not set on your site, not set correctly. So that's my mistake. Your live site will have this working. But what would happen is I would receive an email that had in the body, in the title, what I'd set in the content rule action, and the body would say the following page or the following content item, and I would see the title is ready for your review, and then there would be the title and then a link to click on, and so I could click on it, be taken to that content item on your site. If I'm not logged in, I would be prompted to log in, but if I'm already logged in, I would just be taken to the content item, and then I would be able to view it, decide it was good or not, and then click Publish Externally. Any questions about content rules?
Think we're good.
All right. Thank you. You've been great sports because there's a lot of information here. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is go to the site setup. Now you can see this is the usual way I get to it. I go to my personal menu and then I choose site setup. But since once you're in a control panel, you'll generally see on the right side, basically a portlet, the list of all other content, the list of all other control panels. And so you can also click on site setup here to see the same thing. So we're at all of the control panels, and they're organized into categories. Usually the ones at the top of this listing are the ones that you're likelier to use. As you get lower and lower, you're going to get into like danger zones. Probably what we should do is, excuse me, for those of you who are going to be doing different things, like if any of you are going to be modifying the drop-down menus, then we should probably schedule some time to review how to use these control panels. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time today to look at these in detail. So again, as you get lower down, be careful. This is a good reminder, a good point for me to remind you that it's best to avoid granting administrator membership or site administrator membership to a very small number of people. Any of these advanced control panels are kind of danger zones as well. There's a lot of danger here, with one exception, the undo. So let me show you the undo. There, actually, maybe a humorous aside. Rob and I have been working together for a long time, and we've known each other for about, what, 11 years now. And Rob likes to use the management interface a lot. So I'm going to publicly embarrass Rob. Look at him shaking his head. The management interface is a kind of a historical element of Plone that used to be something you commonly had to use, but over time, Plone has gotten much better about including all of its configuration and all of its settings in the site setup control panels that you were just seeing. But this is kind of a legacy thing that there are still some things that are deeply hidden inside this management interface. The only thing I would tell you that you are safe to use is the undo feature, and that you can find in the undo tab here. I'm going to click on it. Let me shrink my window a little bit here so it's a little bit less wide. The undo tab shows you database transactions, in other words, changes to your site in reverse chronological order. The most recent transactions are at the top of the page. So you can see here that I did an operation on Kim's new page. It was a content status modification, and I changed the status of that page. And that's when I transitioned it to pending. I submitted it for review. So that is a database transaction or a content change or configuration change on the site that I could undo if I check the box next to it and then press the undo button at the bottom. So let me go ahead and do that. Now if I reopen that, and just to save myself a little bit of time, I'm going to go to my dashboard to find the most recent changes. And you can see my Kim's new page is there. I don't know if you caught this, but it's red because it's back to being private because I undid that database change. I undid that transaction. So that's the kind of undo that you can do on changes to your site. And the reason why I'm pointing this out to you is because undo can really save your bacon. Over the years, I've had users in a panic because they deleted entire folders of content by mistake. And they'll call the support desk or they'll call me directly and they'll say, Kim, oh, I deleted this folder that's got 500 PDFs in it. What do I do? And we have your site set up so that there's regular backups, but as you can imagine, restoring a site from a backup is quite an operation, and it has the unfortunate effect of rolling back everybody's changes back to that point in time. With the undo feature, you can selectively go back, identify the changes in your site, and undo them. Now there are some gotchas, and you can read about them in the guide, but you should know that this feature is there for you. The important thing to remember is that the sooner you can get to the undo and try the undo operation, the likelier it is to succeed. If you've got a user who waits 2 weeks to tell you that, oh, I deleted this folder that I really need now, but it was 2 weeks ago I deleted it, chances are you're not going to be able to restore it. You're not going to be able to undo it. You will be able to restore it, but that's quite an operation, which we shouldn't get into here, because especially if you want to undo that, you want to restore that without restoring everybody else back to that same point in time, it can be quite a complex operation. But that's something that's far beyond the scope of what we can cover here. So that's really the biggest thing I wanted to show you about undo, and I think it's a very, very useful tool. Questions about undo?
I think we're good.
All right, let's go back to the control panels, and I think I will try to close pretty soon. Those of you who are interested, I do recommend that you click through on these control panels and have a look. There's a lot of different settings. We I don't think we have time really to get into them here, but just to give you a sample, you can control what shows up in navigation. You can control what kinds of content types should be displayed in the navigation. You can slice and dice Plone configuration settings for a long time, and there's a lot here. You can turn on commenting you can turn on commenting globally, but you can also say in a folder, so if a department has a lot of interactions with the public, you might want to turn on commenting where you might welcome citizen input into some initiative. And so you can optionally enable commenting to be true or on for a particular folder or a particular piece of content. So if you've got a news item that you want people to be able to comment on, which that'll be up to you to decide whether or not this is something you want to deal with, but you can turn on commenting, and there's moderation for comments. And so it's actually a quite powerful system. You saw the content rules. I can't get into all of this, but there's so much here. Beware of the add-ons control panel. We do have, occasionally we run into clients who have a fixation on making changes to this add-ons control panel, and it's something that can be quite, it'll have an effect on your site. So, but you can at least consult what's activated in your site, and you can see, okay, we've got working copy support, which is something that is in the guide, but I won't cover right now, that's currently activated. You can see we have your drop-down menu functionality here is activated. But again, please just look, but don't touch. And I think I probably should end there. All the control panels are listed here. There's information about with some of them on how to use them. Some of them are self-explanatory. There is a lot of control panels. Occasionally, we have in here a warning about be careful, a reminder. Probably we should have a pop-up every time you're in that site setup. It should have a pop-up that says, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" All right. And I think with that, I should probably end here. Just open it up for questions.
Hey, Kim.
Yes.
The thing that I was wanting to know if you could hit on with a little bit was ADA compliant. Things that our publishers need to be aware of. I don't know if that's in your wheelhouse or not, but just tell us what you know about it.
Well, this is it's not a topic that I added for today's training. In the content editor training, we do cover ways in which to make your content most useful to users. And accessibility is certainly one of those topics, because probably the way that your content editors will affect accessibility directly is in whether or not they put in meaningful titles and descriptions for their content. And that includes images that they might upload to the site or that they might link to within their content. So it's important that your content editors fill in those fields with things that are meaningful. So, and Rob is our accessibility and compliance expert here. But I'm just going to say quickly before Rob jumps in, that if you say something like in the title, when you're uploading an image, if you just say image, that's not useful to somebody. It's kind of it's a meaning issue, because Plone by default is going to be accessibility compliant to the highest standards. So Section 508 is an old standard, but it complies with that. But WCAG or WCAG 2.1 is the standard that Plone meets. And so by default, your site will meet those guidelines. And I think Rob is going to be I think he's going to be talking to you later today or possibly soon, very soon, about top 10 accessibility compliance issues to look for and to address. But by and large, your content editors will just have to remember to use meaningful titles and descriptions. Let me see if I can just show you. So if I were to, you can add an image. Sorry, not here, but here I can upload. It's actually not going to let me do it here, but let me go back to my department here. I guess this is my adopted department. You can add new image. And some people might just say this is a screenshot. Okay, that's nice if you can view the image, but someone who's using a screen reader won't be able to tell what kind of screenshot it is or what the screenshot contains. So that would be a point at which to be truly accessibility compliant and to be friendly to your visitors who are using screen readers, that you enter a meaningful title and then in the description say what this image contains, for example, and then you can upload the image. So that probably is the most important part of maintaining accessibility compliance from a content editor's perspective. For the theme, we're going to handle that for you. We've handled it for you. And Plone by itself, especially with the default theme for Plone, which admittedly isn't super pretty, but it works. It's 100% WCAG 2.1 compatible or compliant, and your theme will be too. So you should not have to worry about any aspect of accessibility compliance except for when your content editors are uploading or adding content. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think it does.
Great.
Okay, Kim, I thank you. I believe you're done with the admin training. I want to open it up to the people here that they have any questions for you. If you have any questions you want to ask him now, can they email you if they have a question?
Certainly, they can email me directly or please email Joanna as well. And
okay.
I'll get back to you. And we really do welcome your questions. It's an opportunity for us to share our experience with Plone, as you can tell, maybe, our enthusiasm for Plone. It really is a wonderful tool. It's just got so much. It's amazing what you can get out of one piece of software.
I think maybe most, if not all of everybody that's been in the admin class has been invited to the content contributor class, but we will have other people that will not have been in this class join that class. Anything else from anybody in here? No gnashing of teeth or screaming, just wonderful smiles of the joy and happiness.
I'm suspecting more like shock.
All right, well, I'm going to release all of them, and then Brandon and I will hang around for the scheming that we were going to talk about. I think we have time to do that, right, Joanna?
Yeah, so we've got about a half an hour. So let me get Anthony on the line so that he and Rob can talk about the color changes and everything with you. We will talk a little bit about ADA compliance, but then you have a PDF of the document you just created that you guys, and you can forward on to everyone who was in the training today.
Okay, give us a few minutes while everybody is making their transitions.
Sure.
Transition.
Kim, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. You handled that very well, and you were very eloquent in your explanations.
Oh, thank you, Nick.
Brandon is going to take a bathroom break. I'll be right back.
Are you still there, Nick? Oh, guess not.
Nick is still here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just going to say that I mentioned that I've known Rob for a long time, and it was in 2008 at the Plone conference in Washington, D.C. that I met him for the first time in person, although he had been, he was part of a team at Penn State that was working on their Plone sites, and I was at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh working on our Plone sites. And so we met as kind of a Plone EDU group that Webline, or that Rob's team had essentially established, sort of an interest group of educational institutions that use Plone. And they graciously at Penn State were helping us at UW Oshkosh set up our first Plone sites. And we rolled out over 350 websites using Plone, including a mix of intranets and workflow sites, which I don't think we've talked to you about. But workflow sites are Plone sites that use online forms that you can build. A regular user can actually build these things. And then you take the workflow feature of Plone and you can create your own custom workflows that you can then take the information that's been submitted through forms and push it through a custom workflow with notifications for people. So purchase orders, for example, or an example, or something that we did, somebody could submit a purchase order and then have that go to the finance department, and then they can approve it. They can add account numbers, and then it could go to the finance office, another person in the finance office who can actually make the payment. And all along the way, somebody's notified electronically of the changes in the state. So that's something that we did on campus a lot of, and it saved a lot of people a lot of time just managing the paper that used to get sent physically in the campus mail. And it made it so much easier for users to know where their request was. So travel reimbursements were something that they would get emails about, so they'd know, okay, it's in process, I'm going to get my money soon, as opposed to picking up the phone and saying, have you seen my travel reimbursement? Where is it? Who's got it on whose desk? So if you ever decide you want to take a look at how to improve your business processes, that's something that maybe is doable with Plone.
It's something to consider. I know that when I came on the city, that they had something that was similar, but it was not via Plone. It was a legacy system called Fortis, where they created the various scenarios that you're talking about. It was like somebody wants to get a job at the city, and it goes through several different stages and notifications and folders and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a similar application that we've used in the past. It's called Fortis. And I know that we currently have a project, we're migrating to a newer system, but I'll mention it to Brad, though, that Plone has an equivalent, if it maybe not be used for all the departments, something to consider. Because it seems to me like the interface would be much more robust than the current one.
Okay, yeah, thank you. What's the name of the new system you're migrating those to?
The one that they use is called Fortis, Fortis, and that product is ending life cycle, I believe, and they're migrating people to DocuWare.
Okay.
And a couple of people or a couple of departments I'm aware of that use it. One of them is the city clerk office, that has a lot to do with certain documents that go through different phases, maybe ordinances. I don't know all of them. And then the legal department also has them. I think they're tapped into that, because when a person submits a form on the city website for a job application, there's background checks, there's all kinds of different stages that document goes through, and I believe that system that does a similar service that you're mentioning in Plone.
Okay.
And it takes them through stages. But I think it seems to me like it's more script heavy. Its instrumentation is a little more difficult. But I don't know, because I don't know all about it. But I will mention it to Brad, though. It's something for him to consider.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's been, all right, I'll stop talking. Go ahead, Joanna.
Yeah, Brandon is back, so we can go, Joanna, with whatever you need to do now.
Great. All right, so Anthony has joined us. Anthony is the one who's been doing all of the front-end development on your site. So if there's anything you don't like, it's his fault, not mine. And between he and Rob, I'm fairly confident that we should be able to knock out the overall overarching color scheme for your site. So Anthony, if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen. The goal of today is to walk through the CSS of the site. And I wanted to mention this earlier. I know it says Duke Bennett at the top, like you asked, and Bennett is spelled incorrectly. It actually is fixed on Anthony's individual instance. It just hasn't been pushed to the sandbox environment yet. So in case you caught that, that's what that is. But anyway, so long story short, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna show you what we can do in terms of the colors so that we can start making some decisions. And so the goal is to hopefully have an overall idea before we walk out of this virtual room of what we would want the primary color scheme to be.
That's a good goal, and basically Brandon is our guy. Brandon is not here, and I'm defaulting all the decision making to Mr. Brandon.
Awesome. And so I did share with Anthony your color specs guide that you sent to me quite a while ago. So I've got the Terre Haute blue and everything sitting right in front of me, so we can start looking at how that will appear.
Okay, so I was looking at the color specs in the document and getting ready for this meeting so that I would have the colors available to copy and paste so that we can see how things look with different colors. And I ended up with a little bit of a mystery. The RGB values, when I use these values that are in the document, I come out with these very dark colors. I thought, well, maybe they're percentages, even though we don't typically use percentages for RGB. So I took them as percentages and converted them into new values, and it wasn't black, but it still didn't seem right. I decided to look up the Pantone colors in the Adobe software and take those RGB values, and it's a little bit better. But finally, I just took the RGB values from this document by directly sampling them in the software and got these RGB values. So I'm not sure what we should use since this deviates from your specification.
That's interesting.
And I actually, just for the record, when I was going in and doing all of the mock-ups, I actually had to do the same color picker thing because they didn't match for me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the old ink drop tool, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm gonna have to say the last option.
Okay.
It's what makes the most sense to me. I don't know I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just like a mistaken copy paste or something. We can see these values, and you guys can follow up in case you want to update your document.
Do the CMYK values work better?
I didn't check those. It's pretty close to what we have. I seem to have lost audio. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, we put you on mute because we have that, you weren't here at that time. We have a UPS in a lab next to us that's got a loud hum that just seems to be annoying to anybody on the phones. That's why we mute out every time we're not talking.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Sometimes I have
Yeah.
trouble with Zoom.
Are you checking the CMYK?
Yeah, so I put
values?
those in. I probably should have copied them so that we could see difference. Put these back. They're pretty close.
Really? Okay. Well, maybe that's what we need to work with then. I don't know if that can be, how you convert that to the CSS, but.
It looks like this.
We're at a little bit of a disadvantage because we're sharing your screen on an overhead projector that's projecting on the screen, and we have light washing on it, and so we don't get a real true picture of what the colors look like.
Yeah.
Just by looking, I would say the one on the end, or the gold on the end is the best looking to me.
Yeah, that was the original. What's sampled from the PDF. So we'll go with these two colors.
Yeah,
and
I would.
We'll send you those values.
Okay, yeah, whatever RGB value that is, I guess that's. So did you take that CMYK and punch it in, and you got that gold on the very end?
Actually, yeah, now I'm mixed up.
The ones on the right are the people.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not going to be right. Let me reopen the. 69,124. Okay, that's that. $185. Okay. Because this is an RGB document, when I click back on these, it will have changed the values to be closer to the RGB space, but the RGB and CMYK breaks ended up looking pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to clarify, the CMYK values, have you tried that yet?
Yeah, that's these on the end.
And does that looks pretty close to what I would, what's in that original PDF. So whatever the RGB values come out to on that.
Okay.
Would be probably what we'd want to use, since that is what is in our document.
Okay. Now I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to take this version.
Hey, Joanna, it just occurred to me, we probably ought to like cut the recording and then restart it so that we can hack off this part of it from the training.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know if I stop the recording and then I start it, if it's going to do two separate or if it's just going to pause it. So I will try it though, and we'll find out.
It won't override it, right? We don't want that to happen.
No, it should not overwrite it. So let me go ahead. I'm going to try stopping it and restarting it.
We might be able to split it in post.
Yeah, probably. So.